Welcome to Paint Yourself into the Picture, healing conversations to help us create the best and brightest picture of our lives. I'm Reba Linker, best-selling author, life coach, and manifesting guru, and I'm so glad you're here. Today, Rachel Fowler, creative director and founder of Tonlé, is here as part of our SHE-roes and Pathfinders series. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Reba.
I am, as I mentioned before the show, I'm just so enraptured by what you're doing. Now, can you tell the audience, well, let me just start by saying we all know that it's impossible to create a garment manufacturing plant without creating any waste and without exploiting overseas workers. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it, right?
Yes.
So you have taken the impossible and you have shown it to be not only possible, but very successful. So can you just tell the viewers a little bit about what you're about and what Tonlé is all about?
Sure. So Tonlé is a zero waste fashion brand. And what we do is we take remnant materials that are discarded by other garment factories, and we utilize those materials in making contemporary, fun, wearable designs. And we also use every single scrap in the process. So the smallest scraps that we have, actually they get turned into new yarn and woven and knit into new fabrics. And even smaller leftover scraps from that actually get made into paper. So we really try to use everything. And at the same time, we have a small workshop in Cambodia that we work with to make all of our products. And you know, in our workshop, the members of our team are like family. It's not like a traditional factory. People work on lots of different types of products in a day, and they have a more holistic perspective on making a garment rather than just working on one seam at a time. They actually, you know, our staff are very talented and they know how to make every piece of a garment. And as a result, you know, their jobs are more enjoyable and fun and not so boring and more meaningful for them as well. So, you know, we try to provide good working conditions and the standard stuff that you would expect in a workplace, but that isn't always necessarily standard in places like Cambodia.
It's just amazing what you're accomplishing. Did you come at this from an interest in fashion, or were you trying to do good in the world, or how did you get into this?
So my background is in making textile. So just take a step back, I guess I started studying textiles in college after first pursuing a fine art background and doing some more kind of traditional work like painting, and then moving more towards textile art. But I was always a bit wary of the fashion industry because I knew, you know, about the problems that existed. And even from a young age, you know, I kind of had this awareness that there were sweatshops somewhere out in the world and people were being exploited. But I knew I didn't want to participate in it, but I didn't really see any alternatives. And I visited Cambodia in 2007 on a grant, or sorry, first with a family friend who wanted to start a project there. And that was the first time that I came into contact with a number of fair trade artisans and groups that were trying to practice a more sustainable way of making. And I was really inspired by that. So I applied for a research grant to go back to Cambodia again in 2008. And I was there for a year, actually working with artisans and learning about their processes. And that whole research project let me, you know, kind of see that there was this other way of doing things, that maybe there could be this combination of my passion for textiles and fashion and also you know, something that would not cause harm and that would actually potentially create good in the world. And so I decided to start my own business, and you know, that was about 8 years ago. And yeah, it's gone through a lot of iterations and changes, but you know, it's gradually kind of come to where it is today.
Amazing. Really, you know, this show is entitled, this series is entitled SHE-roes and Pathfinders, and it's really about people like yourself who are facing a challenge and just walking in and creating a solution that, I mean, I'm sure other people think, wouldn't it be nice if, and you just go ahead and do it. What, you know, so part of the goal of my show today is to share what you do and to let people know about it. But the other half of it is to help people understand how they can also become a SHE-roe and a Pathfinder. What gave you the courage? What made you the person that said, okay, this is totally doable?
I mean, I think it's a few things. First of all, I didn't know what I was getting into when I started. I think if someone had told me in the beginning, oh, these are all the things you're going to have to go through to make this happen, I probably would have thought that it wasn't possible. But a little bit of naivete and a little bit of just, sort of blind faith, and that things are going to work out. And, and at the time when I started this business, I was also 22 and I didn't really have too much to lose, I mean, I was single, I didn't have a family, I just got out of college. It was kind of like, I can do anything right now, I felt. And then I think that over time, you do hit those roadblocks and you hit those challenges, and each one grows. Every time you hit a challenge, it's a bigger and bigger one, but it allows you to learn the things you need to learn and get on to the next, step. So it's sort of like about taking one thing at a time and taking each challenge that comes to you and solving that one problem that's in front of you, and then knowing that that problem will then get you to a learning that will then allow you to face the next problem. And it's not about, it's not about thinking like 10 years in the future where I want to be and how am I going to get there, because that is impossible. How can we know how we're going to get to where we want to be 10 years in the future? It's really about, well, how do I get to this next step? And that's what I think that my business, starting the business has been just a series of overcoming bigger and bigger challenges. And I think secondly, having the right people in your life, having the right team around you. And, for me, that was a combination of mentors, friends, family, and my staff. My team is incredible. And I think, knowing what your skills are and what are not your strengths, and how to find the right people to fill in the gaps where you are going to fall short. And I think I've been lucky to be surrounded by some pretty amazing people. So, I think, and there's so many things that you just can't, like, I didn't set out to, I didn't set out to start this big thing, but I think you just, you just goes from one thing to another, and you have to just take everything one step at a time.
Well, that brings up a lot of questions. You're facing multiple challenges that you set yourself, in addition to the ones that life is throwing at you. So right. The first challenge was to create a zero waste facility. And it's amazing because, if people want to go to the Tonley website, you have some really interesting facts and figures. For example, that 1 million tons of textile waste per year are going into the environment. So it's a huge environmental goal. And it's also a huge humanistic goal to have a workplace that is life-supporting and non-exploitative. So what has been the biggest challenge? What have been some of the biggest challenges along the way? Because I know there are those two big ones, but then there's also there's getting people to know about your stuff and buy your stuff and believe in your mission. So what for you what is the biggest challenge facing you right now even?
I mean, I think that just to take like one step back, I think that the challenges, for example, the zero waste model, that wasn't my goal to begin with. And then it goes back to my point, that I was just making, that it's sort of like, you don't necessarily know what the end goal is going to be. And my first goal was, I met a group of women in Cambodia, and I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if I could work together with them to help them form a business that would support them? They were all, they'd all come from very difficult backgrounds, had been discriminated against in the workplace for various reasons, and were having a hard time finding work, but wanted to work and wanted to have a stable job. And so that was my first, okay, let's just see if we can set up a business for these a small business for these 4 people. Yeah. And then that grew. And while I was trying to research materials to use for the business, I found out more about the problem with waste. And then I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could use some of this waste fabric? And then we were using the waste fabric and we still had small scraps. And so that's where I say, you can start with something really small, and then your goals grow, and, your ambitions grow, and your mission grows. And that's okay. You don't have to start from the top. You can start from where you're at, and then, so Sorry, so go back to what was your question, your first question again?
First of all, I love what you just said. It's such great advice to start from where you are. And really it's your response to everything that you're learning that's creating the product or the mission as you're going along. So my question was, what is the greatest challenge facing you right now?
Sorry to get off track.
No, that was fabulous.
So the greatest challenge, I mean, I think that honestly, you know, it's hard to make a business that's profitable while you're, you know, in an industry that's just completely relies on squeezing every last drop out of the environment and out of people. And when the large part of the industry is based on that principle, and you're trying to basically not do that, but also provide a product that can compete in price and quality, because, you know, your consumers, I think generally right now, a lot of people understand that there's problems in the industry, but they also, I don't think they fully grasp that those problems are directly connected to the low prices that they're paying for their clothing. And people don't think it's cheap, but really when you consider all the work and the environmental consequences that go into these products, the prices that we pay are incredibly cheap. It is not the real cost of what those things cost the planet and the people to make. And so when you're trying to compete in that industry and you want to provide people with a quality product, but you also are trying to avoid those things, it's very difficult. And I think that's sort of one of our biggest challenges is how do we be in this industry without participating in these things? It's not just financial as well. I think there's aspects like, for example, marketing that, you know, I feel, I mean, a lot of marketing in the fashion industry relies on exploitative practices of women, particularly in terms of women's body images, in terms of, you know, how we should feel about ourselves. And I think, and I really disagree with that. But then there's also, and the sort of the celebrity cult and all these things. But then it's hard to, how do you get your products out in the world when this is the standard accepted marketing practice without doing that, right? So I think there's so many things in the fashion industry that are like that. That's like, how we participate without participating and still make a viable business, really, because we have to make money to keep this going. And we also have to prove that it makes money for other people to want to do it. So I think that's the biggest challenge.
That is a mighty task that you've set yourself. I can see the issues and I can see how hard it must be. And my thought is that you're really not walking the same path. You're walking a parallel path to that very commercial, and that is creating your own, like just the way you've created your own way of building this business. You're coming at it as an artist, actually, first, rather than a person that's trained in business practices per se.
Yeah.
And I think that was all to the good, because it enabled you to see different things than someone who had, let's say, a business degree would have. Very different, of course. Well, gee, you know, there's something about threads that is giving me a clue here, and it's something mystical and magical. I'm speaking as someone who's written a book called Follow the Yarn. Mm-hmm. And, you know, of course, during writing that book, I was playing with all kinds of metaphors about knitting things together and revealing the pattern and all those wonderful metaphors. And I just want to quote from your website, because you touch into it as well, which is on your About page, I believe. And this is from the Tonlé website. We believe style is more than what you wear. It's what you choose to be a part of. When you buy Tonlé, you're buying one-of-a-kind clothes that carry meaning across cultures and continents. Every thread matters. And to me, that is like, actually makes me want to cry, because it's so beautiful. And I think about how excited I would be to wear one of your products, which I will be doing as soon as I can order one. And that the threads in those clothes tie me to those people in Cambodia, ties me to you, ties me to our effort to make a difference. So it's, you know, I don't know how to make that into a big commercial success, but I know it's really meaningful to me.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and that's, and it's really touching that you feel that connection, because that's what we're trying to do. You know, a big part of the way that we do, you know, marketing is more about, it's about connecting you to the people who are making your clothes, because I think that, you know, if you were really in touch, if you, not you individually, but we as a people were really in touch with who is behind our clothing and how much work goes into it and how much care, and, you know, that these are not just garment workers, they're not just some nameless faces in a factory, but they're real people who want the same things that you want, you know. Every mother, you know, wants her children to have a good education and, you know, have a good future and do better for themselves. And, you know, we all have very similar dreams. And I think in the long run, you know, we want the best for our families and for the planet. And that's what everyone around the world wants. And there's lots of things that are different too. But, you know, I think if we really understood that, we really grasped a little bit more about the people behind our clothing, we would be less likely to exploit people, and we would be less likely to participate in that. And I think we would also care more deeply, take better care of the clothes that we buy. We would buy less, we would love them, and we would cherish them because of the honoring the work that goes into them and the people behind them.
Yes. One thing that's very beautiful about your website is that you have really beautiful pictures of all your employees. So thinking of that, I'd like to ask you about those 4 women with whom you started Tonlé, and how are they doing today, if you want to share one of their stories.
Yeah, sure. So one of the women who started with us 8 years ago, her name is Ravi, and she is now our quality control advisor or supervisor. And she's been a mainstay of our business since then. And when I started working with her, you know, I would basically go to her home, and at first she was just doing hand sewing and screen printing, and I would do these things with her in her home. And every week I would go, a lot of the women lived in the same neighborhood, so I would go to each of their homes and bring them different things. And then next week I would go and collect them. And so she's always been a big support to me as well. And she's just a very thoughtful person. I mean, she's grown up, you know, she grew up under the Khmer Rouge era. So she, you know, didn't have an education from a young age, but she wanted to be educated so much that later on she actually studied English by nighttime because, you know, under the Vietnamese control, she was not allowed to study English. And then in school, she actually studied Vietnamese and Russian. So she speaks a little bit of 4 languages. But she was actually in the 90s, she became very sick and was discriminated against at work because of her sickness, and actually couldn't continue to work because of it. And so she's very intelligent and very skilled, but she could not get a job because of this. And her husband passed away as well, so she was supporting 4 kids on her own. And that's when I met her, and she was so excited to, you know, to get back to work and to do, you know, something that would be good for her future and for her kids' futures. But she's always been a great support to me as well, and it's an amazing part of our team. And she's over time learned more and more skills in textiles, and you know, she's also a great leader among the staff. So, you know, she's the perfect person to be in quality control. So she has she has to be able to tell people when they've made mistakes and how to fix them, but also she does it in a way that everybody, you know, it's very kind at the same time. Like, okay, this is wrong, but here's how you fix it, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to get there together, kind of thing. So it's just a very inspiring person.
Great skill to have. And I just want to ask how, just as a business person, last question, how do you assemble a team? Or you said you do obviously have a great team of mentors and team players. Do you have any advice for how to assemble a successful team?
I think it's very difficult, and there's no, for me, I've gone through a lot of different methods for how to find the right people, and I wouldn't say that I haven't had any great sort of main strategy, but the number one thing that I look for when I'm hiring people is values, because I find that if someone embodies the values that our company believes in, and they're willing to, and one of those values too is I would say working hard and being invested and interested in the work, as well as embodying other company values. I think that those people are going to be willing to learn anything, and even if they don't necessarily have the skill set at the time, they can learn. I mean, in a lot of the skills that we need in our company, anyone could learn them if they wanted to, if they put their mind to it. And so we're looking for people who want to do it and are excited about it and are interested in the mission. And at the end of the day, that's more valuable than anything else.
That's pretty awesome, because once they're there, that you can see from the story you shared about Ravi, there's so much room for growth and development, as long as they start with the basic values, the core values.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Is there anything you'd like to add? Because I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I really, really value your time here with us. Is there anything else you wanted to share, and how should people find you?
Oh, sure. So you can find us at tonle.com. That's Tonle. And Tonle means river in Khmer, by the way, in Khmer, the language in Cambodia. And you can also find us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. So you can keep in touch with us that way if that's easier for you. And it's been a really great pleasure talking to you. And I think it's so nice to hear how supportive you are of our work, and just that you really grasp what we're trying to do. And it means a lot to me. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I let you go, I just want to say, obviously the holidays are coming up. Obviously the YouTube video is going to be evergreen, so there'll always be some holidays coming up. But as it is, there are specific holidays coming up. So of course people can shop Tonle. But in addition to buying your garments, and also you have wonderful accessories, I should add, like really nice handbags and things like that. So people should check that out. But besides that, how would you like people to support you? If there's another way you have in mind that people can support your company and your mission.
Sure. So we, of course, we always appreciate, if you see something that you like from Tonle, sharing it on your social media pages is always really helpful. Recently there was a video about us in the Huffington Post, and that video got a lot of people were sharing it on Facebook, and just the shares on Facebook brought a lot of traffic to our business. So even if it's not something, even if you can't purchase something, that's really, really helpful. Just sharing the story. I think generally educating yourself about the garment industry and, what's happening. I think it's just creating more awareness is good in the world. And that in the long run, the more awareness there is, I think, about the garment industry and also alternatives to it, is better for not only Tonle, but everyone in the world who is affected by the industry, which is almost everyone. So I think that, educating yourself and sharing the information that you learn is beneficial to all of us.
Great. So absolutely. There's a lot of information on your website. I really encourage people to go and read and explore some really interesting facts and some more about the company as well. Thank you, Rachel, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I really appreciate you taking the time and meeting with me as well.
It's my pleasure. And I want to thank the viewers for watching this episode of Paint Yourself into the Picture. If you like what you're seeing, please stay in touch. My website is rebalinker.com. My Facebook group is Leaders in Self-Love. Please subscribe and like this video. I love to read your comments, so share how this all resonates with you. Are you excited to start your own company? Are you excited to go buy some eco-friendly products? Join us again next week for another healing conversation. Until then, remember that this is your turn to shine. Learn how to paint yourself into the picture, because this is how we heal. Many blessings.